welcome back to Leading Entrepreneurs of the World. I'm Stelios Hatzaki, CEO of One Business World. Leading Entrepreneurs of the World features entrepreneurs, founders, and business leaders presenting on cutting-edge topics and the latest industry developments. Our goal is to provide the global business and entrepreneurial communities with a window into the minds of those who are shaping the future of our world. Today, we're very pleased to welcome leading entrepreneur, speaker, and author, Todd Connor. Todd is a widely sought-after speaker, thought leader, and consultant who leads individuals and organizations to unlock their full entrepreneurial potential. Todd is the founder of Bunker Labs, a national entrepreneurship organization with chapters in 30 states across the U.S., which works with military veterans and military spouses who want to start their own business. Bunker Labs exists to empower the military-connected community to achieve their entrepreneurial dreams, and Todd and his team accomplish their mission by facilitating an action-oriented, member-led network of entrepreneurs and small business owners, providing practical tools and resources and highlighting inspirational stories that showcase the possibilities and accomplishments of the community. Todd is also the founder of the Collective Academy, Emerson House, as well as other for-profit and philanthropic organizations. Todd, it is a great pleasure and an honor to have you here with us today to hear more on the incredibly exciting topic of third shift entrepreneurship. Thank you and welcome to Leading Entrepreneurs of the World.
Thank you, Stelios. It is wonderful to be with you, and thank you for the opportunity to talk. I'm going to share some slides here as we dive into our conversation, because I have a lot to say on this topic of entrepreneurship, and in particular, what I'm calling the third shift entrepreneur. I come at this work, as Stelios said, focused on helping the military connected community. And I've been doing that for the last 8 years. But even beyond that, I've just become so interested in what is it that allows people to start things? And in this country in particular, in the United States in particular, why aren't more people starting businesses? And I come into this work as someone who has started organizations, but for a long time didn't really consider myself an entrepreneur, didn't really understand kind of what the venture capital landscape looked like, didn't really, frankly, even understand some of those terms. And it's taken me a while, and it's taken me, having met a lot of people, to really come to a new point of view, not only about what is broken as it relates to entrepreneurship and why more people aren't starting businesses, but also what we need to do to change that. And so this is both a conversation about how can people get started, and I'm going to tell a lot of stories that amplify what actually starting a business can look like. And it's also an argument that I'll make that we need to talk about entrepreneurship differently. We need to do it differently. We need to support entrepreneurs differently if we are to have more people starting businesses, and in particular, more people that historically have not had the opportunity to start businesses. And so third shift entrepreneur to me is the time that we take in the nooks and crannies of our days. It's the evenings, it's the weekends, it's the mornings, it's the coffee breaks, to build whatever it is that is next for us. If we talk about entrepreneurship as a full-time pursuit, the vast majority of people can't afford to quit their job and start a business and do that on a full-time basis. Most of us don't have the cash on hand. Most of us need the financial security of a job. Most of us need the money to pay our rent and to pay our bills. Most of us have children or aging parents that we're taking care of, or life obligations that frankly make the idea of quitting our job and starting a business feel too intimidating, too risky, too distant for us to ever really access. And here's the good news, and the research shows this: smart entrepreneurs don't quit their jobs. They keep their jobs, and they start small, and they may not even start with the intention of building a business, but in the act of starting small things and doing it from a place of financial security, they are setting themselves up for future success because they have the financial platform, they have a job, they're taking their time, they're trying small experiments, they're seeing what works, and they're building from that place of certainty. So entrepreneurship has been presented and talked about as a risky endeavor, but it doesn't have to be. And I think that we need to change the conversation about entrepreneurship. Let me introduce you to Matt Muryavi. Matt is, as you can see, or was, in the United States Marine Corps. That's him on the left, standing with a comrade of his. That's him in the middle at a welcome home party. Matt served on active duty in the United States Marine Corps from 2008 to 2012. And like so many people that served in the military or in the Marine Corps, had a fantastic experience, did things overseas, was part of a unit, part of a team that he felt deeply connected to. He felt deeply mission oriented while in uniform serving his country. And like so many military veterans, when you get out, you miss that. You miss that sense of mission. You miss that sense of camaraderie, that sense of doing something. And this is a theme that not only military veterans have, but it's a theme that people have if they're leaving, playing a high school sport or a college sport, or they miss being a part of a team if they were, on the school board and then they left the school board, or they were part of a small community and maybe they moved and they no longer had that small connection. So a lot of us in our lives get to places where we feel like we're just not totally fulfilled. Maybe we've lost that sense of mission, that sense of purpose. And worse yet, we know what it means to operate with a sense of purpose. Some people that have been in part of startup cultures, then they go to a big corporate and they miss that sense of focused mission, that sense of we're trying to get somewhere, do something hard. People sometimes finish training for a marathon, complete the marathon, and then have a sense of longing because they no longer know what they're working towards next. And so this is true of a lot of us. And I talk about entrepreneurship, and it's really about the lives that we're living. It's about the fulfillment of our lives. For me, it is not just about some giant exit someday with a massive financial return. I do this work because I think it fulfills human potential, and wealth, to the extent it even shows up, is a lagging indicator of that fulfillment. So here's Matt coming back out of the Marine Corps. You can see, having done his time, and by the way, also ready to do new things in life, which is another theme of getting out of the military. Here's Matt today, as you find him on LinkedIn. And Matt's a friend of mine, so I can say this. He doesn't actually have a photo on his LinkedIn profile, but as you can see, he's doing some pretty impressive things. He was working at Accenture, a significant management consulting firm. He has an MBA from Northwestern University, which is a very competitive school, hard place to get into. As you looked at his LinkedIn profile, which, by the way, this is how we see so many people, right? This is the interaction that we have with people. It's how they present themselves on LinkedIn. You can see that he was in the Marine Corps there from 2008 to 2012. As I mentioned, he graduated college in 2008, and he's a very accomplished guy. But, what this resume doesn't quite tell us is, what's he want? How's he feel? What's next for him? And these are questions that, if we're honest with ourselves, we're all wrestling with. And our professional lives are not just about how we make a living. It is not just about the W-2. It is not just about our income. It is also about our identity. It is about our hopes, our dreams, our talents, the private aspirations that we have for ourselves that maybe we never even express publicly because we're not sure the world is ready to hear it, or we're not sure that we have a place, or we're scared of the rejection that might follow. And as you look at Matt, there's nothing that's broken. He's got a great job. He's done noble things in service of our country. He's highly credentialed. But if you ask Matt, he would tell you that something was missing. And entrepreneurship is important. And let me tell you, in this country, it isn't going well. There's a lot of people like Matt, like myself, like other people that I'm going to share with you, who aren't sure if they are in a position to start a business. And it's important that we talk about why they aren't sure. The rates of entrepreneurship in the United States are at a 50-year decline, almost all-time low. And that's strange because there's a lot of popular literature and popular celebration of entrepreneurship. But the rates of entrepreneurship in this country are at a dismal low, and it's actually getting worse with younger people. So that strikes people as strange, considering entrepreneurship at Northwestern University, where Matt got his MBA, is the #1 study for MBA students. So how is it that it's the #1 course of study and that fewer people are doing it than ever before? Well, here's Matt now. Actually, this isn't now. This is a couple of years ago. Matt knew that something was missing. He had a good job. He had good degrees, but he just frankly didn't feel like his full potential was being realized. he didn't know exactly what to do. He wasn't going around with a pitch deck saying, I want to be an entrepreneur, but he had an idea that he wanted to work with his hands. He wanted to build stuff. And he just started doing that. It wasn't terribly thoughtful. He just knew that he needed an outlet for his creative expression, some ideas, some wanting to build stuff, wanting to work with his hands a little bit. And he started building. One of the first things he made was this table set. It's beautiful. Made it himself. Had never made furniture before, but thought I could use this. And I liked the idea of going and finding down wood. I think this particular piece of lumber was in his backyard. He found it, he cut it up, and he put a table together. He figured out how to find the legs of the table and put the pieces together. He filled in some really specific details, as you can see here with the little coin on the centerpiece. And then you've got the little edge trimming that he filled in. And then he made this table. And really, this was just a creative expression for him, just a way to let off some steam and do something that felt exciting for him, something that felt organic. And we all have these kind of private interests. You know, sometimes we call them hobbies. Sometimes it's just what we're drawn to if we're looking at our phones. Sometimes it's the daydream that we have. Well, if I could just quit this job, this is the thing that I would go do. And too often we tell ourselves, I either stay in the reality that I'm in, or I quit and I go start whatever's next. And that's the wrong way to think about it. Quitting, as I tell people, is not the same as starting. You don't have to quit in order to start. And what Matt demonstrated in starting to build furniture while he still had a job was that he did, in fact, have a passion for this. He was, in fact, good at it. He actually did build furniture that he could show people, that people could ask about. And it wasn't just furniture. He started to look at his backyard. It's a small space, but he started to get creative with things that he could build, that he wanted to see, that he wanted to use for his own sake. This is an example of a corner bench that he built. And it's somewhat complicated. It's got wood elements, it's got steel elements. He started to build flower boxes. And then he started to grow stuff inside the flower boxes. He built this picnic table, finished the wood, and he started to create this communal space. You can look at some of the comments from people on social media that are really excited. You can see from Matt's comments just the joy that comes out from having made stuff with his own hands. He talks about this being made purely with hand-powered tools, never touched a wood shop or a machine. It was made with love. His passion begins to come out, and it's flourishing, and you can see it in his social media. You then begin to see other projects. He starts working with brick and stone and steel, and he starts to bring other friends into the process, and he starts to elevate his vision for what can happen in his backyard. And it's just that. He's just looking at his own spaces. He's looking at his own interests and saying, I want to work with my hands. I want to build stuff. I'd love to see our backyard become something different, more exciting, more inviting, more of an experience than what it is today. He built a brick oven kitchen, and he's, again, on social media with zero masonry experience, he built a pizza oven. And he talks about this, like any journey, ours was filled with highs and lows. And although life is about the journey, not the destination, that's a truism. A journey that leads to a pizza oven in under 2 minutes is an effing delicious destination. The fun, the levity, the joy that comes from him just building something is evident. And this story is not unlike others. He starts hosting experiences in his backyard. He partners with an organization called My Block, My Hood, My City, and just announces a stand-up comedy event in his backyard. There you can see the pizza oven in the back corner, the furniture on display, and he starts to create this experience. He starts hosting movie nights. And then when COVID hits, he starts having socially distanced outdoor events. And listen, here's the point. The journey that Matt is on is the beginning of a journey into being an entrepreneur. But no point along the way did Matt say to himself, I'm doing this because I'm an entrepreneur. At no point along the way did Matt stop and build a business plan. At no point along the way did Matt stop and join an accelerator or think I have to read a book before I can proceed. But entrepreneurship very much looks like what Matt is doing. And most of the support for entrepreneurs isn't built for people like Matt. And that, my friends, is the disconnect. Entrepreneurship, for things that aren't built to scale, or maybe don't look like they're going to scale at the outset, don't really have a place to go for support. We too often conflate entrepreneurship with being about venture-backed, scalable businesses. We think about Silicon Valley. We think about technology-enabled startups. We think about things that can go from 0 to 100 in the course of a year because that's what the investors want. But that whole framework, that thinking, that the notion of pitch competitions and 12-week accelerator programs and what venture capitalists are interested in and what is scalable, intrinsically excludes the vast majority of new businesses that are going to be started in this country. It ignores professional services for the most part. It ignores hospitality and local businesses for the most part. It ignores things that are simply idea stage and experimental and hobby activities, or simply curiosities that people want to pursue, which, by the way, could at some point become scalable, but may not be. And until we begin to celebrate and understand and honor and ultimately support the kinds of things that Matt's doing, we're going to miss a huge opportunity to elevate and start more entrepreneurs down the path in this country. If you look at the word entrepreneur, these are the kinds of word it conjures: business, venture, entrepreneurial, finance, capital, market. There's a lot of words in here that are intimidating. Competition. If you think about Matt building a pizza oven, nothing sort of resonates in terms of what you see in the words on this page. And that's a problem, because what Matt is doing is, in fact, starting something that is the genesis of the business. I didn't share this part, but the follow-on to what Matt has been doing, building into his own interest, his own passion, is that he's got 6 other people in the community that have asked him to come retrofit their basement or their backyards. He's got people that are asking him to come build outdoor experiences. They're asking him to come build pizza ovens. They're asking him to come build tiny prefabricated cabins centered around a campfire that can sort of create an outdoor experience, because Matt has a unique view as to the alchemy of physical assets outside in your backyard to the experience that can be created. And other people, once they see that, they want them for themselves. And that is the beginning of what a business is. And so even though he doesn't resonate with the words on this page, he certainly, in my view, is on the journey towards entrepreneurship. And we need more people like him doing what it is that he's doing. If you hear the word entrepreneurship, what's strange is that it's never been more popular and it's never been more cool, in spite of the fact that we're at a decades-long decline in terms of the rates of people actually starting new businesses. But here's why: because we think of entrepreneurship as being this kind of winner-take-all test of sorts. There's a lot of kind of, I don't know, harsh language and this notion that you better come with your A game, and that there's these people like the people that you see here that are the gatekeepers on whether or not you get to be successful. It feels intimidating. It feels almost like winning the lottery if you're to get it right. And it ignores the things that you can do without outside money. It ignores the things that you can do that may not go anywhere. It ignores the things that you can do that are just personal passion projects. Maybe you just want to work for yourself, and that's okay. But we don't need the permission of the sharks to tell us what we can and cannot do in this world. And that is not the same as being an entrepreneur. You don't have to sort of fit the mold of what might get presented there by way of an investment to get started and to build your own business. There's so much that you can do today, but we've confused the permission structure that is sort of presented around entrepreneurship as being the same as the ability to start our own business. And so while I like watching a lot of these shows too, and I appreciate some of these personalities, I think it ignores too many entrepreneurs. It looks too, frankly, white. It looks too male. It looks like Harvard dropouts. It looks like things that we just can't relate to ourselves. It looks like people inheriting businesses from their parents or coming into wealth. We don't understand at a lifestyle level, yeah, but how does a person like me that doesn't have money saved up manage to start things like that? And I think it's time for a new conversation, and one that isn't centered on entrepreneurship being cool, but one that is centered on entrepreneurship being honest. Oh, and I almost failed to mention the ultimate celebrity entrepreneur, our former president. So we're seeing the celebration of entrepreneurship, but an ethos of it being sort of cutting, a cutthroat, an ethos of it being permission based, an ethos of it being driven around money and financial returns. But really, entrepreneurship is something different. Entrepreneurship is not the same as a scalable business. It's opening up a daycare facility in your neighborhood. It is opening up a catering company to serve your local community. It is opening up a bed and breakfast like I own in LaPorte, Indiana, or a professional services business to do leadership development, which I've also done in Chicago, Illinois. Or it's launching a nonprofit that doesn't have a revenue model, but is driven by corporate sponsorship and scaling it to 40 different cities, which is something I've also done. But none of those models fits neatly into the entrepreneurship ecosystem in terms of what the supports tend to look like. And I've tried to create those supports in my professional life, but I think it doesn't necessarily seem like the mainstay approach to how we think about entrepreneurship and how we support them. And a lot of people, too many people that are actually starting things, doing real things, don't think of themselves as entrepreneurs. I think of people like Nancy Preston, who opened up a shared kitchen space in New York City, not because she had a desire to be an entrepreneur, but because she had seen her mom, who worked in kitchens, always back of house, always in the kitchen. And she saw how she struggled to create financial security for herself and for her family. And Nancy, who also served in the military, when she got out of the military, she was committed to making the ability for people that wanted to be food entrepreneurs, making that ability easier for them. And she knew that if we could take out the risk of creating a back off, all the overhead that comes with building a kitchen, the physical infrastructure of a kitchen, if we could take that away and create community kitchens for people, a co-op environment for people to borrow the kitchen space while they built their restaurant concept, that she could de-risk the process of people becoming food entrepreneurs. And that's a passion that she had, and she found creative ways to bootstrap together the things that she needed to create her initial space. She got early committed members to help build that co-op community. And she started something very real called Milk Money Kitchens. Now, COVID put a giant monkey wrench in that, but she pivoted, as she always does, and made use of that space regardless, turned it into actually a facility, a service to provide meals for people that were stuck at home. And she built partnerships to do that. And people stepped up and said, it's important for us to get meals to people that can't leave and can't access food. And so Nancy comes at this work not with a desire to become a scalable entrepreneur, not with a desire to seek outside funding, but with a heart to create access for people that want to become food entrepreneurs. There's other people like Cortez Riggs, who launched the Military Influencer Conference Series. And conference series, investors don't sort of necessarily think that that's an interesting thing. Maybe it can be, but who knows? But Cortez built a community of the military, amongst the military, of those that were trying to influence the military community. And this is something that he knows because he's been a military influencer himself. He knew that there were other people like him that wanted a place to get together to talk about their strategies. And as he was having those conversations informally, he just took it up a notch and said, well, why don't we actually put together our own conference? And the first year that he did it, it was really well done, but it wasn't huge. And the next year he did it, he blew it out of the water, got sponsorship, got several hundred people, and it grew in notoriety. And these are just some of the snapshots that came out of that conferencing series. And again, Cortez, like Nancy and like Matt, wasn't coming at this trying to become an entrepreneur per se, wasn't coming at this trying to seek outside investors, wasn't coming at this trying to scale something out of the gate, but was coming at this with a personal passion for a problem that he had seen in his own life that he knew others shared as well. And he wanted to solve it for them and solve it for himself. Like Nancy creating a co-op community kitchen, like Matt building furniture for himself that other people then see and want for themselves, like Cortez convening the community that he very much wants to be a part of for himself. And Military Influencer Conference has expanded like COVID. They got thrown a monkey wrench, but he pivoted. He created a magazine. He's got a clothing line coming up that speaks to the diversity of the military community. That is something that isn't talked about. And he knows from his own desire to buy cool apparel that represents his values that wasn't there. And he stepped forward with Triple Nickel, his new emerging brand, to create a clothing line that people like him want, people like me want. So that's it. It's the simplicity of this. Now, at some point, there could be investors along the way, but we don't need investors to go put together a line of shirts, the hat like he's wearing in the photo, and getting our beta out there and selling it out of the trunk of our car, like Brene Brown started her career selling books out of the trunk of her car, or the founder of Spanx got her start selling Sarah Blakely, her product line out of the trunk of her car. We don't need permission to do that. We can do that ourselves. And in fact, if we tell ourselves we need permission, then we pour all of our energy into trying to get someone else to give us the money or to give us the green light, instead of just taking ownership and doing it ourselves and moving forward in the ways that we can with what we have and from where we're at on our own terms today. And Cortez is continuing to do that every single day. Even though Military Influencer Conference couldn't convene in person, they organized it virtually. The sponsorship continued to come in, continues to grow. People that are starting stuff are cultivating the skill of starting. When we think about entrepreneurship, it's too often presented as a career choice that's a point in time and it either works or it doesn't. When the Bureau of Labor Statistics asks questions about what does it mean to be an entrepreneur, they're asking how many employees you have, how long you've been in business. It assumes the sort of definitive structure, like we talk about a mature business, and that's not what a startup is. People are starting stuff, they're cultivating their interests, and frankly, what they're doing in the process is they're getting good at starting, which is different from thinking of entrepreneurship like winning the lottery, like either it hit or it didn't. Instead, it's much more a skill. We're developing the capacity. We get better at it every time we do it. That's why rates of entrepreneurship in this country among those 50 and older are the highest, because they're experienced and they've done it lots of times. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. Oftentimes, it's multiple projects at once. The names of these things, they change, they come and go. Maybe we're not even legally incorporated. We don't need to be. These initiatives morph. Sometimes they become one thing. Nancy Preston, she shifted from being a co-op kitchen to a community support organization to sort of meet the need, but she'll go back. And so this idea that it's some kind of fixed structure, it's a business with a name, with a revenue model, with a plan, with a longitudinal vision, it's just not always the case. And that's okay. That's my argument, is that that's okay, because that's the process of figuring it out. We're usually, by the way, doing this while we have full-time jobs. And that's also okay. In fact, that's strategic. Bill Gates didn't quit his job until Microsoft was already a successful, mature venture-backed company. The founder of Nike didn't quit his job until Nike was at a point of maturity. A lot of the successful entrepreneurs are de-risking the process by not quitting their job. Damon John was working at Red Lobster, right? And so we have to celebrate the people that are working full time and support them on that assumption. Jessica Dalka, another great entrepreneur in Chicago, she started something called Chicago Planner Magazine. It was a digital magazine, and she grabbed the handle Chicago Planner, and she started going around just creating social media awareness for cool things in Chicago. And from there, started convening people for conversations, and from there, started partnering for conferences and built and grew this platform. What's interesting about Jessica is that, again, and this is true of so many entrepreneurs, as she was doing all this and then COVID hit, she saw a need to kind of do something different. And she realized that people want cocktails at home. And she and her partner, Zach, knew how to make great cocktails. And she had built enough relationships. She had seen enough things through Chicago Planner, which, by the way, was a part-time job for her always, just building this kind of conferencing and magazine series. But she saw an opportunity for people to get cocktails at home, and she started a service called Bad Cat Cocktails, in which she delivers cocktails to you. And you could look at this model as an investor might and say, well, what's the rate of return, and what's the ROI, and how much these cocktails cost, and how are you going to scale, and how fast can you get to 15 cities? And those are relevant questions for an entrepreneur or for an investor, but they don't have to be relevant questions for an entrepreneur. What's important about Jessica's story is that she's doing all this work. She's doing this creative outlet. She's got this great product. I always buy her stuff. I use it. I give it as gifts. Is it a full-time job? No. Is it a beautiful product? Yes. Is it going to scale to 15 cities? Probably not. But does it make Jessica a better professional? Yes. Does it make her a better known person in the community in which she operates? Yes. Is it creating job opportunities for her? Absolutely. Is she growing her brand or reputation? Yeah, for sure. Is she having fun while doing it? Absolutely. And what I know from Jessica's story is that Crane Chicago Business, who has awareness on all these interesting things that she's doing, came to her and wanted her to join her team, join their team. And so often in entrepreneurship, it's not just a linear journey. It's building up ourselves, our reputations, while we cultivate these interesting projects that we have that leads to good but unknowable things. And I come to you and I'm on a mission this for the next several years to tell people this is good. This doesn't need to be like you have to apologize at the lack of sophistication of what you're doing. You don't need to apologize that it's not going to scale. You don't need to apologize that you don't have outside investors. And you don't need to shy away from the fact that it may not ever become a full-time job. This is, in my view, the good stuff. This is what we need to be celebrating. Starting a business, which again sounds like a definitive kind of winner take all thing, like a definitive moment, a stopping and a starting point. And it doesn't have to be, but starting a business, building something and sharing it with the world is in and of itself a powerful career advancement strategy. If the business never works, we all ought to be in the business of creating for ourselves our own sort of LLC. This is the ultimate career advancement strategy for us. This is the ultimate risk mitigation in a world full of uncertainty, is that we all step into our creative potential, create projects that matter to us, and allow the world to have a reaction. The last story I'll tell is Andrews Ramirez, just to show that this isn't just about hobby projects. Andrew built a professional services business that has a technology platform associated with it based on wanting companies to become more efficient. And Andrew was finding small ways to help friends who had businesses make those businesses better. And he parlayed that into creating his own advisory firm, Vargas Andrews, with a business partner, putting videos out on LinkedIn about how businesses can get better and winning a couple small clients here and there. And at the outset, an investor would look at that and say, well, consulting it's professional services. It's not scalable. We wouldn't invest. And that's true. We don't actually need investment. But Andrew, with several clients under his belt, started to undergird his support system with technology platforms. And now all of a sudden with technology platforms, it does become a scalable, investable business. And those conversations might come. He might at some point want outside capital. He might at some point want, investors, but he may not ever need those investors. And that's okay. But the business that he's built, which again, it never looks interesting. It has no value when we're beginning. It always looks like a distraction. It always almost looks like improbable or like a hobby. It doesn't capture people's imaginations. But what's important to know is like it always starts that way. And so as entrepreneurs, we need to understand that it always starts that way. And if you're in the business of supporting entrepreneurs, you need to understand that it always starts that way. And we need to not skip that step. We need to not skip that early stage. We need to acknowledge that stage as being critical towards what comes next. The point at which it is ready to go on Shark Tank, the point at which it is ready to get an outside investor, the point at which it is for ourselves a full-time job, right? And it can become all of those things or none of those things. But it's that capacity to start, it's that courage to start, that is something that we need to more often celebrate and recognize in other people as well as in ourselves. And that's my challenge to you. I say this because I've known hundreds of entrepreneurs in places like Atlanta, in places like Boston, in places like Chicago, stories of people pursuing what matters to them that may never scale, but will be for us and for our country and for our economy, the future. And I challenge all of us to lean in and recognize and celebrate these people and understand that they deserve a front row seat to any conversations that are being had about what the future of the economy, what the future of our country looks like. And that Silicon Valley has had sort of a disproportionate hold on the entrepreneurship conversation, but we need to recognize that third shift entrepreneurs are in communities across the country. They're doing things. They're doing it right now, but they don't feel like they're part of the conversation. They don't feel as though they have a seat at the table. And so while I celebrate and love scalable businesses and big exits and Series A and B and C rounds, I think that's cool stuff if that's what you're about. But that is not the same as celebrating entrepreneurship. That's one sliver, one specific type. And there's a whole other set of people in this country doing really interesting things, some of which you see here, none of which fit neatly into a category, and many of which will never need or want outside capital. So here's my advice and here's my charge as to what we need to do going forward if we're to make it a better picture for our country, if we're to see more people start businesses. We need to tell more honest stories. The Harvard dropout mythology leaves too many people behind. Most of us can't relate to that story. We need to tell stories like the people I just told you about and celebrate them. We need to celebrate and cultivate small acts of creation. We need to teach young people to start small things, even if we don't know where it's headed. And that it's okay. It doesn't have to have a mature business plan. Most things don't survive, after a few months, but that's okay. And most things, almost all things, are going to change, even if we do have a plan for what it's to become someday. We have to acknowledge life constraints, that people are working, they need jobs. They shouldn't quit those jobs. And if we make entrepreneurship something that requires a 12-week full-time incubator to participate, or if it only offers programming during the day, we're going to miss a lot of people. And we need to start offering services and meet people where they're at and encourage them to keep their jobs. Stop talking about entrepreneurship as a giant risk, because too many people are going to acknowledge the reality of their lives that they can't take that risk. Well, here's the good news. You don't have to take that risk. You just need to learn to start small and celebrate the small acts of creation. We have to use different language about entrepreneurship and not assume it's an either or, not assume it's a full-time pursuit, not assume it's something that implies risk. We have to talk about it as creative acts of expression. And we have to see these small creative starts in the context of economic development and career development and community development. We need this stuff, even if it isn't about giant, exits and big returns and scalable solutions or more efficiency. It's important because it manifests people's full potential. It's important because it makes our communities better. It's important because we don't actually know where it's going to end up. And in fact, it might become the next Amazon, right? And even if that's not the goal, it still could be. And my argument is that we have to start paying attention to what the ground game is showing us and hold these people up and recognize them as entrepreneurs and celebrate them as such and encourage more people to be taking these small starts, because it is in fact the predicate to what comes next. I encourage you to stay in touch with me. Third Shift Entrepreneur is the book that both tells stories, lots of stories of entrepreneurs that have started. And I also give you a 12 observation framework about how to do this. This is a repeatable process. And I've studied this in hundreds of people because I'm curious about it for myself. And I've created a playbook on how to start in the earliest stages, the pre-business model canvas, the pre-pitch deck stage. What does it look like for real people with jobs who are just a little unfulfilled, who feel like there's more? What does it look like for them to step out and get started? And that's what the book is all about. So I encourage you to go to Third Shift Entrepreneur and buy the book wherever books are sold. It's available May 25th. Stelios, thank you for the opportunity, my friend. You are indeed a leading entrepreneur of the world.
Todd, thank you so much for a wonderful, very inspiring and incredible presentation. It went wonderful success stories of so many fine people. As you said, there's never been a more exciting and more cool time for everyone to embark on their entrepreneurial journey and start a new business based on what one enjoys doing, with all the tools and resources we have available to us, and with also the interconnectivity of the world. And through Third Shift Entrepreneurship, we can get it done. Some people are up for the journey, some may not be, but for those who are, this is a great time, and Third Shift Entrepreneurship is the way to approach it. Thank you very much once again for your presentation and for your time as part of Leading Entrepreneurs of the World. Congratulations on all of your great success. And thank you, and talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Stelios.
Thank you, Todd. Bye-bye.